Coming up in SVGTV News and Sports this evening at 7, government signs MOU with world's largest cruise port operator for over $200 million EC port upgrade. Health Minister warns region must prepare for future pandemics. One killed as hundreds protest in Kenya against U.S. Ebola quarantine center. And in sports, CWI names squad for Sri Lanka T20 series. These and other stories coming up in SVGTV News and Sports this evening at 7.
Good evening and welcome to SVG-TV News and Sports for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. I'm Twyla Thompson with the details. A Memorandum of Understanding MOU was signed today between the Government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Global Ports Holding, the world's largest cruise port operator, for the development of the country's cruise tourism sector. The agreement, which is expected to span 30 years with an investment of up to $250 million EC, seeks to modernize the Kingstown cruise port and make it more attractive for international cruise passengers. The first phase of the project is expected to begin once the final agreement is concluded.
The proposed concession period is for 30 years. The time frame provides for certainty necessary for significant private sector investment and ensures the long-term benefits for our country. The Memorandum of Understanding that we are about to sign contemplates a phased development program totaling approximately $225 million EC. Phase 1 will be an investment of up to $75 million EC. And it includes the modernization and improvement of cruise terminal facilities in Kingstown, the creation of enhanced public and commercial spaces, supporting infrastructure upgrades throughout the port area.
The arrangement also includes a provision for Vincentians to hold a 30% ownership stake in the port facility.
One of the most important features, and a very important for us, of this Memorandum of Understanding is its commitment to local participation. That is local involvement in employment at the very highest levels, local involvement in the investments. A special purpose vehicle will be established to allow Vincentian nationals to hold up to 30% ownership in the port operating company. This means Vincentians will have an opportunity to benefit indirectly from the increased economic activity that will naturally follow such a major investment with such a dynamic and reputable partner. And also to participate directly in the ownership and success of the enterprise. The bigger it grows, the more benefit we will derive indirectly and directly.
Chairman of Global Ports Holding, Mehmet Kotman, projected an increase in cruise ship arrivals once the necessary infrastructure is in place. He noted that the company has established strong relationships with major cruise lines throughout its operations at ports around the world.
Equivocal, i.e., the brand is here, but the demand is not there yet. So our primary duty is to ensure that through the marketing, through the renewed infrastructure, through our links and channels, we have very good relations with all the cruise lines, that the marketing is there, hence the brand gets what it deserves. In my opinion, the traffic that we have, I think around 200,000 plus or minus, should reach triple that number within the next 5 years 5 to 7 years once all the infrastructure is in place, number one. Number two, very relevant to St. Vincent and Grenadine is, as some of you might know, we manage the Puerto Rico cruise port, which is a major cruise port, because the trip from Miami or the Gulf, let's say, whether it's Mexican or US Gulf, I don't know, or the Caribbean, is too long of a trip till St. Vincent. So having Puerto Rico and having other ports like Antigua, St. Lucia, and probably two more to come in this area, Eastern Caribbean, will have a major impact on how we talk to the cruise lines as a result.
Minister of Tourism, Honorable Dr. Kishore Shaloo, welcomed the new partnership, saying it is expected to create opportunities not only for Vincentians, but also to enhance the visitor experience for tourists arriving in the country.
Talking about everyone, we're talking about taxi drivers, taxi operators, the tour guides, the vendors, right, restaurants, cultural ambassadors and practitioners, right? Everyone, we believe, will be impacted by this partnership. And what we have recently realized with the data is that, and the PM alluded to it as well, is that similarly over the last 5 years with the cruise passengers being just under 300 per year on average, we in the East, but in the OECS, we have the lowest visitor spend of only about $59. And that is partly because our product, it is not mature enough. It is not, at this point attractive enough. And in partnership with GPH, there's a commitment as well to ensure that the shore excursion and the activities on land, right, improves, which obviously means more time for more passengers, one, and more time spent in the country and the communities means spending more. So,
Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade and Diaspora Affairs, Honorable Fitzgerald Bramble, has issued what he has described as a clarion call to donors and development partners attending the first Development Partners Roundtable under the new administration to strengthen and centralize their coordination mechanisms. Delivering welcoming remarks at a cocktail reception on Wednesday night at Holiday Inn, Minister Bramble told participants, including government officials, representatives of UN agencies, international financial institutions, and bilateral and multilateral partners, that maximizing the impact of investments and eliminating fragmented or duplicated efforts will require all partnership initiatives to be aligned through the Office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning.
This centralized alignment is not about creating administrative hurdles. Rather, it is about establishing a unified architecture that matches your capabilities with our government-approved development priorities. It ensures that we operate under a one plan, one pipeline, and one result dashboard framework. To achieve this, we have to figure out how we work together. And I would like to propose tonight 3 specific ways. Firstly, our challenges do not exist in isolation. A climate-smart agricultural project directly intersects with tourism value chains, for example, blue economy frameworks, and digital governance. We must scale our financing in a truly multi-sectoral way to address these interconnected realities.
Minister Bramble further noted that in a multi-hazard environment, rigidity is a liability. He urged the development partners to be flexible, adaptive, and willing to streamline traditional bureaucratic processes to better respond to the urgent and evolving development needs of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And thirdly and lastly, true resilience requires the institutional and human capacity to execute. We must couple financial investments with aggressive capacity building, particularly scaling our technical training pipelines to accelerate implementation on the ground. This acceleration is vital to achieving our medium-term growth and stabilization goals. To demonstrate our institutional willpower, I am proud to pledge the full capacity of my Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are actively repositioning our portfolio to lead a robust, aggressive economic diplomacy agenda. We recognize that official development assistance cannot bear this burden alone. It must be a catalyst, and my ministry commits to paving the way. For one, designing the risk-sharing, blended finance, and legal architectures necessary to make St. Vincent and the Grenadines an attractive, investment-ready destination for global private capital.
World Bank country representative for the Eastern Caribbean, Alexander Gustai, expressed appreciation to the government and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for hosting the Development Partners Round Table. He said the event provided a valuable opportunity to reflect on their shared commitment to supporting SVG's sustainable development aspirations.
It also reinforces an important principle that development is most effective when it is guided by national priorities and strengthened through genuine partnership, coordination, and accountability. We recognize the resilience and determination demonstrated by St. Vincent and the Grenadines in navigating a series of significant challenges in recent years, up to the present day, you might say, while still pursuing an ambitious development agenda. The discussions today highlighted both the progress achieved and the opportunities and challenges ahead as the country advances its goals for economic resilience, climate adaptation, social inclusion, and sustainable growth. As development partners, we remain committed to working collaboratively with one another and with your government for the benefit of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our collective goal is not simply to provide support, but to ensure that our efforts are coordinated, responsive, and aligned with the country's priorities, maximizing impact and delivering meaningful results for all Vincentians.
Following concerns raised by some residents in North Leeward regarding sand mining activities being carried out by Roads, Buildings and General Services Authority, BRAXA, in the Roseau River Valley, Member of Parliament for North Leeward, Honorable Dr. Kishore Shallow, convened a meeting with residents last evening at the Golden Grove Learning Resource Center to discuss the project. Dr. Shallow noted that consultations had already been held with residents prior to the commencement of the project and that the initiative had received community support. He said that based on the agreement, he welcomed the project and its potential benefits.
And as much as there have been consultation, if the people say that they're still not comfortable, then I think it's only fair and right that we come to you and hear what are your concerns. Now, you see the minister responsible for BRAXA, I reached out to them when I heard concerns expressed as your area representative here in North Leeward, asking for briefing notes and the facts, and they were presented to me, right? Even from my knowledge prior, because this was discussed a few weeks ago in cabinet. And we thought that this was a good opportunity for North Leeward. Quite frankly, once the facts were presented to me, from considering it to be a good project for North Leeward, I thought it was an excellent project, an opportunity for North Leeward.
The minister highlighted what he described as years of neglect in North Leeward, particularly in the areas of infrastructure and agriculture. He said residents now have a greater opportunity to benefit from development initiatives because of improved access to resources and investment in the area.
So imagine being provided with the opportunity of having the materials here in North Leeward, which will reduce the cost significantly, right, of developments, infrastructural developments. But in addition to that, which is a promise BRAXA has made, saying that now North Leeward will be in a position to capitalize and be at the forefront of these developments, because we have no excuse now. The material is in here, is in North Leeward. But we're also creating opportunities, employment opportunities for the people in North Leeward. And Kemp has said to me that they don't want to have to bring people down here every day, right? They want people in the area, so they're going to be a training process where we train persons who want to be operators of machines, right? And we create the employment for people in North Leeward.
The importance of infrastructure development in North Leeward was also emphasized by the Minister of Infrastructure, Honorable Nigel Stevenson. Minister Stevenson said he has always maintained that projects undertaken within communities should directly benefit the people. He stressed that the government is committed to transparency and community engagement.
Very critical. Compare this with what took place at the other quarry, where I know you're still remembering it. The pain, the scars, the whole way that, the manner in which that quarry was undertaken. It is still very painful to you. And it caused the people of North Leeward to be very apprehensive. You still have an issue with trust. And that is why I believe so many of you are here today. You don't trust the system because of your previous experience. But I'm saying to you, straight off the bat, this enormous volume of topsoil is of no effect where we are going to be in the Rosa River. Compare that with what obtained before.
Meanwhile, Chief Executive Officer of the Roads, Building and General Services Authority, BRAXA, Kem Bartholomew, has clarified that the sand mining operation being conducted in the Rosa River in North Leeward is similar to the activity taking place in Raboka on the windward side of the island. Bartholomew explained that the sand being harvested consists largely of material deposited following the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano. He noted that BRAXA has entered into a contract with Glossy Bay in Kanawha to supply sand valued at approximately $3.8 million.
We went down to Kanawha to see where these people want this material, with the same physical thing, with surveying department, with the office of the chief engineer in BRAXA. We went down, we looked, and we were satisfied that as a state entity, it is best that we get involved in this operation than any private entity. Yeah? So we submit an application to physical planning in February. We got approval in principle. And after that approval in principle, that required certain conditions and submission. Surveying drawings, design of the ramp, because we said we don't want to do anything permanent, a temporary ramp on the beach, the structure to store and to have comfort station for the workers. They required those things. And an ESIA. So we set about, because we had to do some clearing to be able to do the surveying. We asked the guys who we contracted right here from North Leeward not to cut any fruit trees.
Bartholomew said that the environmental assessment was conducted by environmental consultant Dr. Renald Murray, who also carried out consultations with stakeholders and residents. Bartholomew added that BRAXA has already received approximately $500 from shipments of sand delivered to Kanawha.
And what we are doing in the Rosa River is simply harvesting. We take the material, we sift it into the sizes that we want, and we take it by barge. The barge and the agreement that we have with Glossy Bay for the sale of 110,000 tons of the sifted material amounts to approximately $3.8 million. We got them to deposit in the amount of 500,000 approximately. That includes in cash, equipment to start the operation, not have all the resources required to start. They did that over 500,000, they didn't get any material yet. We are only selling it. They have to it. So they came to come by barge. They hired a barge that Braxa had hired before. We constantly bring in aggregates, crush aggregates, because we do not have that here.
Gonsalves questions impact of customs charge reduction on consumers. This and other stories coming up when we return with more local news. Stay with us.
Welcome to C-Star.
Welcome to the upgraded C-Star Limited,
where we offer to almost all your household items.
They've expanded their range to sofas, dining and patio sets, beds and mattresses, wardrobes, kitchen cabinets, office furniture. That's just a few from the luxurious collection. Not forgetting their signature quality windows, doors, rails and bathroom enclosures. Journey on up to C-Star, where their friendly sales clerk is happy to assist. C-Star Limited, where quality meets style.
A funeral service should be one that you can be proud of. One that leaves lasting memories of your loved ones. And that's where you need the New Haven Funeral Home. We are proud of the quality and class we have brought to the industry. We are proud for having trained the very first certified embalmers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are proud of leading the way in terms of live streaming of funerals online so that your family members overseas could also be part of the celebration of life. We are constantly improving our services. We are driven by customer satisfaction and we are proud of all that we do.
New Haven Funeral Home.
Bowman's Pharmacy, why choose us? We have all the prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, personal care products, lowest price guaranteed. Located conveniently next to the Bank of SVG on Grenville Street. Opening hours Monday to Thursday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Email us bowmanpharmacy@yahoo.com. Call us today at 456-2235 or 593-3918. Bowman's Pharmacy, easy to find and ready to serve you.
Listen, the big hardware stores have been ripping off Vincentians for years with their high prices. They came General Hardware with the lowest prices ever in SVG. Now, the big guys are scrambling to drop their prices, but they still can't beat the General. So don't let them fool you. General Hardware still has the best prices on lumber, plywood, and steel. And even with a sale, the General beats that too. So go on, compare prices. Then come to General Hardware and save dollars every day. Because nobody beats the General. Nobody. General Hardware Supplies, located next to Yvette's Pork City in Arnesville. Call 453-9000.
On Friday, June 12th, you can help realize your dreams with a lotto jackpot of $88,000. Your dream vacation, a university degree, that new ride, your new house can all suddenly be within your reach. What a little lotto can do. It's a lotto jackpot of $88,000. This Friday, June 12th, you have to be in it to win it.
Welcome back. Opposition leader Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has expressed concern that the recent reduction in customs service charge may not result in meaningful savings for consumers. Speaking on Star Radio on Thursday, Gonsalves argued that the 5% reduction, which is expected to take effect on Friday, is unlikely to lead to noticeable price reductions for shoppers. He maintained that consumers may see little benefit unless businesses and importers pass the savings on to the public.
When Friday announced and says, well, the 5% fuel surcharge, custom service charge, he'd waive that for the next 3 months, and also to calculate the duty, you're going to use the freight number for the cost of the freight from January. These are not things which are going to be passed on to the consumer. I'm telling you, as sure as the sun rises tomorrow morning, those things are going to be taken, almost all of it. In fact, more than likely all of it, by the importer. And you ain't going to see it.
Gonsalves further contended that a legislative framework should have been put in place to ensure compliance. He said that without clear legal mechanisms, there is no guarantee that savings resulting from the reduced charge will be reflected in lower prices for consumers.
If you're doing, for instance, the matter concerning the fuel, the freight, as we had suggested in our manifesto to use from 2019 numbers, you put a legislative structure in place to make sure that they have to comply with that. He said, no, the task force go monitor that. The task force has no legal jurisdiction to do a thing like that. That's fraud. That's emptiness. That's a man abdicating his responsibility for serious work to deal with a serious problem. And somebody has to tell Friday that. Somebody close to him must tell him that. Things not going well. And everybody on the ground knows it.
Regional news is coming up next. Stay with us.
The Ever-Ready Funeral Home at French's is your friend in times of grief. With over 40 years' experience, they are prepared to take care of all your funeral arrangements. Embalming, lowering device service, grave mattresses, carpeting, vaults, tombs and wreaths. Arrangements for television obituaries. Cremation is available upon request. Ever-Ready Funeral Home offers the finest in caskets and coffins, local and imported. So, in your time of need, call Ever-Ready Funeral Home at any time. 456-1494. Ever-Ready Funeral Home, offering service above self.
Quality products, quality care, low prices, great customer service, all at Q-Care Pharmacy. Q-Care leads the way, providing all your pharmaceutical needs, a variety of personal care products, and so much more. Located on Halifax Street. Telephone number 451-2690. Q-Care Pharmacy, where the Q stands for quality.
Tourism has many benefits to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It creates growth and a boost in economic activities, infrastructure development, job creation, entrepreneurship, and is a source of foreign exchange earnings. Supermarkets and vendors, bars, restaurants, taxis, tour guides, hotels, service providers, and many more all benefit directly from income gained through the tourism industry. Taxes collected from visitors to our country help St. Vincent's economy and its growth. Tourism is everyone's business. Live it, love it, embrace it.
Tourism is everyone's business. Yeah. Live it, love it, embrace it.
Shop with confidence at Quartz. Get the lowest prices guaranteed. Get appliances, furniture, electronics, and so much more. If you find a lower price on any other products elsewhere, we'll match the price. Plus, we'll give you back 110% of the difference. Shop with confidence only at Quartz. Bringing value home. Special conditions apply.
Welcome back. Health security is national security. It's economic and human security. This is according to Trinidad and Tobago's Minister of Health, Dr. Lakram Boudou, who emphasized that the future of health security lies not in a nation's ability to respond to crisis, but to prevent and detect disease outbreaks before they become national emergencies. We hear more in this report.
The next pandemic will not ask whether we are ready. The next pandemic will simply arrive.
A clear warning from Minister of Health Dr. Lakram Bodo, who stressed the importance of building resilient systems that can withstand future pandemics. While speaking at the second Joint Regional Health Security and Regional Coordinating Mechanism meeting hosted at the Hyatt Regency on Tuesday, the minister pointed to the COVID-19 pandemic that crippled tourism, disrupted supply chains, and overwhelmed health systems as proof that national health surveillance and preparedness remains top priority in the region. He noted, however, that preparedness and response cannot be achieved in isolation and that the health security of one Caribbean nation is intrinsically linked to the health security of all Caribbean nations.
So no country, not the wealthiest, not the most technologically advanced, not the most scientifically sophisticated, the lesson is very clear. Preparedness is not a destination that we arrive at. It is a continuous process of investment, vigilance, collaboration, and adaptation.
Executive Director of the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, Dr. Lisa Indar, highlighted that since 2025, CARPHA and its partners have driven major advances in regional health security. Together, they have supported member states during outbreaks, expanded strategic partnerships, surveillance capabilities, and developed Caribbean-tailored innovations in early warning systems.
The international news is coming up next. Stay with us.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
$344,000. That's the Super 6 jackpot for Friday, June 12th. It's $344,000.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Since 2012, we have provided reliable, professional dialysis services in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are now proud to offer you new solutions for your health problems. Each new solution is being delivered to you with the same high degree of care and professionalism. We also use the best technology in the delivery of our services. So, does your doctor need a precise view of what's happening inside your body? Let us perform an ultrasound for you. Ladies, if it's your breasts, then choose our mammography service. For all issues related to men and women's health at any stage in your life, our team can perform the necessary investigations to put your mind at ease and recommend solutions for your problems. If it's to see within your chest or check for broken bones and fractures, then use our state-of-the-art U-Arm X-ray service. For you aging men and women, we can now check your bone density, which will reduce any complications that may arise with overall bone health, osteoporosis, or arthritis. Health Solutions will provide answers and results in a timely, accurate manner in the most comfortable environment, while you are taken care of by well-trained and experienced staff. Please call us today at 451-2836 or 434-3170, or visit us online at healthsolutionsSVG.com. You can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Health Solutions, where we are providing solutions in SVG with care.
Singer is a family store. We sell everything you need for your kitchen and more. Top brands and appliances. TVs, fridges, cookers. We make your life so easy. Just come in and see us. A wide range of furniture. Right here at Singer. Affordable beds and mattresses. Right here at Singer. Washing machines to make your laundry clean and fresh. Singer is a family store that gives you the best hire purchase deals. Right here at Singer. We'll outfit your home. Right here at Singer. The #1 family store. It's us with Singer.
Welcome back. On the international scene, Kenyan police have fired tear gas and used water cannon against protesters in Nanyuki for a second consecutive week, with rights groups reporting at least one person killed. Demonstrators are opposing the government's decision to allow the United States to build an Ebola quarantine facility exclusively for Americans at a nearby military airbase. President William Ruto has defended the agreement, citing decades of U.S. funding for Kenyans' health care, but protesters remain unconvinced. We hear more in this report.
It was the second day of violence in Nanyuki since last week. Rights groups say at least one person was killed, but the protest began more peacefully. Demonstrators tried to march in the town centre against the government's decision to allow an American Ebola facility to open in the nearby military airbase. Kenya's President William Ruto says the deal includes US funding for Kenya's healthcare.
That money is for Ruto himself only. Even SHA is not working. We are tired.
It is not going to help us. How can Ebola help us? We are already struggling with cholera, with bilharzia, with TB. But now it's trying to, and even the social health authority is not functioning.
Police said the protest was not allowed and tried to stop it with tear gas. Props were confiscated and demonstrators arrested. But that didn't stop outraged crowds gathering in the suburbs. Neither the protests nor a court ruling last week ordering the government to suspend the deal have stopped the Ebola facility's construction.
Police are now using water cannon to end a standoff on this road. It's gone on for a couple of hours. The demonstrators are angry. They say they don't want Ebola in their town, so police have used tear gas, and now they're bringing in the riot trucks to try and clear the demonstrators who built a series of burning roadblocks down this street.
People here have many grievances, including with the rising cost of living, corruption and poor public services.
That's the news. Sports is just ahead. But before that, let's take a look at the local weather forecast.
The weather report sponsored by General Hardware.
Listen, the big hardware stores have been ripping off Vincentions for years with their high prices. They came General Hardware with the lowest prices ever in SVG. Now, the big guys are scrambling to drop their prices, but they still can't beat the General. So don't let them fool you. General Hardware still has the best prices on lumber, plywood, and steel. And even with a sale, the General beats that too. So go on, compare prices. Then come to General Hardware and save dollars every day. Because nobody beats the General. Nobody. General Hardware Supplies, located next to Yvette's Pork City in Arnesville. Call 453-9000.
Present conditions cloudy and hazy. Winds northeast at 19 kilometers per hour. Temperature 27.1 degrees Celsius. Relative humidity 91%. Barometric pressure 13.9 millibars, 24-hour rainfall 2.5 millimeters. Today's maximum temperature 31 degrees Celsius. Today's minimum temperature 24.2 degrees Celsius. Sunset 6:31 p.m. and sunrise will be at 5:37 a.m. Forecast occasionally cloudy and breezy with scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms, and moderate haze. The synopsis: a tropical wave will be crossing the islands.
The weather report was sponsored by General Hardware.
On Friday, June 12th, you can help realize your dreams with a lotto jackpot of $88,000. Your dream vacation, a university degree, that new ride, your new house can all suddenly be within your reach. What a little lotto can do. It's a lotto jackpot of $88,000. This Friday, June 12th, you have to be in it to win it.
And welcome to the Evening Sports. I'm Triska Campbell. We hear that Cricket West Indies has named a 15-member squad for the 3-match T20 International Series against Sri Lanka. The matches run from June 11th to 14th at Sabina Park in Jamaica. This is the team's first T20 series since this year's ICC Men's T20 World Cup.
The 3-match T20 International Series against Sri Lanka in Jamaica forms a key part of the West Indies' preparations for the 2028 ICC Men's T20 World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. Young batsmen Akeem Auguste and Jewel Andrew, along with all-rounder Shamar Springer, are the three changes from the side that fell just short of the semi-finals at the global event. Fast bowler Alzari Joseph was left out under workload management and will prepare for the two-match test series in Antigua. Head coach Darren Sammy says the series is a chance to entertain home supporters and build on the passion and togetherness shown at the World Cup. He wants the team to keep growing and make fans proud against Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, Shamar Joseph, who returned home ahead of the third ODI for personal reasons, is expected back before the series on June 9th.
For the second game running in Jamaica, persistent rain forced an ODI between West Indies and Sri Lanka to be abandoned without a ball being bowled. This won the third and final ODI in the series at Sabina Park meant Sri Lanka secured the trophy with a 1-0 margin, courtesy the 41-run victory they enjoyed in the series opener. The umpires had several inspections, but after discussing with curators, they decided that getting play started by the cutoff of 8:02 p.m. for a 20-over shootout was almost impossible. While the mood around both camps might be damp, both literally and metaphorically, following the two straight washouts, the outcome is still a landmark one for the visiting Sri Lankans. It is their first ODI series victory in the Caribbean in 23 years, the last coming in 2003. For the West Indies, the weather and the subsequent series result is undoubtedly a frustrating blow. Denied a chance to avenge their opening game defeat, it's not only a first series loss at home in 3 years, but more critically, it's a result that hinders their pursuit of vital ICC ranking points required for automatic direct qualification to the 2027 ODI World Cup. The Women's Caribbean Premier League WCPL is entering a bold new era. Fixtures for the 2026 tournament are now live, and the entire competition will unfold in Barbados this September. There's more in this report.
The 2026 Women's Caribbean Premier League has been re-engineered from the ground up, designed to put Caribbean women center stage and inspire the next generation of female cricketers. All matches will be played in Barbados over a 10-day festival of cricket in the first 2 weeks of September, with 8 games staged at the iconic Kensington Oval. 4 franchises will battle for the title: the Barbados Tridents, Guyana Amazon Warriors, Trinbago Knight Riders, and the newly created Jamaica Empress. Built around the values of empowerment, the will to win, and community, the league's new campaign, She's In, rolls out across social media region-wide. Every match day promises more than cricket, with children's activity zones, health and wellness checks, and a showcase for female entrepreneurs. Organizers say this is only the beginning, with plans to welcome teams from outside the Caribbean in 2027, turning the WCPL into a truly global competition.
And finally, with the FIFA World Cup kicking off tomorrow, Thursday, June 11th, with hosts Mexico squaring off against South Africa at the famed Azteca. These are the updates. Here's more from THT Sports.
Some of you old enough to remember the 1986 World Cup as one of the best. Notably, Diego Maradona's breakout performance, as well as the popularization of the Mexican wave. 40 years down the road, Mexicans came out in their thousands in the streets on Saturday to mark the occasion in an attempt to break the Guinness World Record for the largest ever human wave just days before they had to co-host the FIFA World Cup. No confirmation yet on the record, which was set at a NASCAR race in Tennessee in August 2008. That is, a 157,000 plus fans. And FIFA has reversed their decision, allowing fans at the World Cup matches to bring one factory-sealed disposable water bottle into the stadiums. The decision comes just days after their ban on plastic water bottles due to safety concerns, with bottles being used as missiles. The initial ban has raised concerns among supporters, and even the New Zealand Prime Minister about staying hydrated during the matches. Good move. Wayne Cunningham, TTT Sport.
That's how we end sports this evening. I'm Triska Campbell. We'll be right back to wrap things up.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
$344,000. That's the Super 6 jackpot for Friday, June 12th. It's $344,000.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Listen, the big hardware stores have been ripping off Vincentions for years with their high prices. They came General Hardware with the lowest prices ever in SVG. Now, the big guys are scrambling to drop their prices, but they still can't beat the General. So don't let them fool you. General Hardware still has the best prices on lumber, plywood, and steel. And even with a sale, the General beats that too. So go on, compare prices. Then come to General Hardware and save dollars every day. Because nobody beats the General. Nobody. General Hardware Supplies, located next to Yvette's Pork City in Arnesville. Call 453-9000.
Welcome back. Now for a second look at the headlines. Government signs MOU with world's largest cruise port operator for over $200 million EC port upgrade. Health Minister warns region must prepare for future pandemics. One killed as hundreds protest in Kenya against U.S. Ebola quarantine center. And in sports, CWI names squad for Sri Lanka T20 series. Now for a recap of the local weather forecast. Forecast occasionally cloudy and breezy with scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms, and moderate haze. On behalf of all of us here at SVG-TV, thanks for viewing. I am Twyla Thompson, inviting you to visit our Facebook page for a recap of the news and daily headlines. Also check out SVG-TV's news in 15 weekdays at 12:45 p.m. Again, thanks for viewing and enjoy the rest of your evening.
And welcome to our program today. My name is Joshua Bardu and I am the president of an organization called Equal Rights, Access and Opportunities SVG Inc. And for those of you who do not know, Equal Rights, Access and Opportunities SVG Inc., abbreviated ERAO SVG, we're an intersectional human rights organization here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we have 4 main thematic areas focused on the rights of women, children, LGBTQI+ persons, and persons with disabilities. And a main component of our work surrounds education, awareness, and sensitizing the public about various human rights and social justice issues. And today, we are here for another program with our lovely guests to have a conversation. We're having a conversation surrounding sex, sexuality, and gender. And today, we have with us Dr. Alisa Alves, who is a school and clinical psychologist with over 15 years of experience locally, regionally, and internationally. So she has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience that she can share with us today as we delve into this sensitive topic within our Vincentian society. So Dr. Alves, we thank you for being here today. And we thank you for joining us for this conversation that we're going to be having surrounding sex, sexuality, and gender. Now, some of you might be watching wondering where we're talking about sex for on your TV. So, Dr. Alisa Alves, we know the issue of sex can sometimes be sensitive. It can sometimes be controversial. Should sex, I'm talking about sex, be something that we should be ashamed of?
I'm really, so first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I think this is a really important conversation for us to have. And just even starting from this first question, the idea of shame and the role shame plays in our willingness to either talk or not talk about sex and sexuality, I think that's a huge part of some of the challenges that we have, right? I think it's important to note that human sexuality is part of the human experience. So we have some basic biological drives that have to do with our survival. So hunger, thirst, sleep. But there are some people who would say among our drives is the drive toward sex. But sexuality doesn't just have to do with sexual behavior or sexual intercourse. It has to do with how we both express and understand ourselves sexually. It has to do with things like intimacy, how we connect with other people, how we understand and connect with even our own bodies. It's emotional, and it can even be spiritual, right? So that being said, it is this core part of what it means to be human. And given that, I don't think it's something that we should feel ashamed of. It's something that is just part of our human experience. And the shame and taboo that we have surrounding it is what creates so many difficulties, including, I remember we had a previous conversation about sexual abuse. I think because of shame, it really prevents people from being able to come forward and being able to talk about these things, or even in terms of people's sexual and reproductive health. Shame keeps them from seeking help when they need it. And of course, today we're going to talk about how these things touch gender expression, gender identity, and even sexual orientation. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today to start moving away from that shame and bring the conversation out into the open.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alves. So sex is a part of human experience. We're sexual beings. You know, it's a main part of who we are. So it shouldn't be something that we're ashamed of or ashamed of talking about and learning about, because from the knowledge that we gain, we can only better understand ourselves and others.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
So as Dr. Alves said, you know, we're going to be exploring various concepts, various issues today. We're also going to be dispelling some myths today. But before we get into that, I just want to give the viewers a little overview of the law here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. You know, so as sexual beings, we have sex, but there are rules that we have to work within, and our society has laws. So in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the age of sexual consent for girls is explicitly 15 years old. And for boys, we do not currently have an explicit provision, but it's implied to be at least 16 years old based on at least our marriage act here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, whilst the age of sexual consent is 15 or 16, depending on the particular sex or gender you are, when it comes to the age of medical consent, that also has a different age of consent, because we have different age of consents in St. Vincent and Grenadines regarding various issues. Now, even though a girl per se can have sex at 15 years old, when it comes to the age of medical consent, there are certain things that she may not be able to do when it comes to getting medical assistance or help, treatments, testing, maybe even getting condoms for herself, because she's not of a particular age. And in St. Vincent and Grenadines, despite a girl being able to have sex at 15, get pregnant at 15, she cannot do certain things for herself without having parental or guardian consent. And both boys and girls need to be 16 years old and above in order for them to be able to give consent of their own violation without having a parent or guardian with them. So just to let you know, while we do talk about sex and these concepts, we're framing it in a way whereby consent is involved, and most importantly, for the most part, we're referring to consenting adults where we can here. Though these issues impact us at various ages, when we're having sex, we want to make sure, or talking about sex, we want to make sure it's consensual. We're not talking about anything unconsensual here. And also, for the most part, when we're framing certain conversations, these experiences can affect youth as well, but also they also can affect adults. And, many adults, are engaged in many of these different activities and have a certain understanding of themselves and others. So we just want to, lay that down about the law, that we're talking about consenting persons here today on this program. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up consent. Because anytime we are talking about sex, and I may mention this again during the course of our conversation, that once we are talking about something that is not consent driven, then we're not talking about sex. Then we're talking about abuse, assault, or rape. So consent is something that shouldn't be coerced. It should be freely given. It should be reversible. You should know what you're consenting to, so it should be informed.
Yes.
It should be enthusiastic. You should really want to do what you're doing. And it should be specific. It should be for one thing and not another thing. And so I want us to keep promoting that as a message, because we do not stand for anything that would promote abuse.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. So we're on the same page.
Yes.
And we've laid that out throughout our discussion here surrounding sex, sexuality, gender. Consent is an important factor, okay? Consent of the individual or those engaging in whatever acts.
Yes, and that children cannot consent. Yeah, and only adults can consent to sex.
Definitely. Definitely. So, moving forward, we're going to delve straight into an interesting and important topic, the issue of sexual orientation. As human beings, we're sexual beings, as we've already laid out. Sex shouldn't be something we're ashamed of. We shouldn't be ashamed of engaging in it. And all of us have a sexual orientation.
Yes.
What exactly is sexual orientation? We also hear about terms such as gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, pansexual. Is straight or heterosexuality a sexual orientation?
Yes.
Dr. Alvis, tell us more.
Right. So sexual orientation refers to who you're attracted to. That can be sexually, it can be romantically, emotionally. Basically, the idea of like somebody who you want to engage with in a relationship, and that will have, like I said, either physical or romantic components to it, or both, right? And I think what's critical to understand is that it's not something that you choose. It's something that you know about yourself, and it's a deep part of who you are. So some of the terms that you referred to, so somebody who is lesbian, so this would be someone who identifies as a woman and they are attracted to other people who also identify as women, right? So they are attracted to the same perceived gender and sex. Gay, that would be a man who's attracted to other men, but sometimes gay is used as an umbrella term for anybody who isn't heterosexual. We'll hear gay, and in some circles you will hear queer as well, which is a term that's been reclaimed, because there are spaces and places where it has been used as a slur.
Yes.
So, but there are persons who have said, well, I'm comfortable with that as a term. I like it as an encompassing term. It's the way that I refer to myself, for example. But we'll hear gay as the umbrella term, but it's men who are attracted to other men. Bisexual. So this one is interesting. So this has to do with somebody who, so whatever their gender identity and is, they are attracted to both their own gender identity and other gender identities, right? So so let's say we have a woman who identifies as being bisexual.
Yes.
She may be attracted to men, she may be attracted to women, but she also may be attracted to people whose gender identities and expressions look differently. We're going to talk about that.
Yes. During the course of today's program.
So,
yes.
So bisexual is someone who experiences attraction to more than one gender. So it doesn't mean two. It means my own gender identity and others.
Okay.
Asexuality is interesting. So these are people who experience very little or no sexual attraction to other people. However, simply because you don't feel the urge to be sexually involved with somebody doesn't mean that you don't want to have meaningful relationships with people.
Correct.
You can still want companionship, you can still want romance, but not feel particularly sexual. And then finally, pansexual is someone who can be attracted to people basically of any gender. And so this is the big tent. Basically, people who may tell you that they are pansexual may say things like, I don't really think too much about people's gender identity or their gender expression. I am really, when I'm interacting with someone, I'm interacting with them as a person. And that's what I'm attracted to.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. And heterosexuality.
And of course, heterosexuality.
Is that a sexual orientation?
Of course it is.
Yes.
Right. So I was going through LGB, right?
Yes.
LGBTQ,
P, yes.
right? But yes, of course, being heterosexual implies that you have a given gender identity and you are attracted to people who are of a different gender identity than yours. So if you self-identify as male or a man, you are attracted to women, right? And vice versa.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you broke down that for us, talking about sexual orientation. You know, people can have different sexual orientations, and even being heterosexual or straight
is a sexual
orientation.
Yeah, so just in case people thought that they didn't have a sexual orientation.
So
you do.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're watching us today and you identify as a straight person, you have a sexual orientation as well. So that's interesting, Dr. Alvis. Now, when we talk about sexual orientation, there's also the other aspect of it, such as sexual behavior.
Right.
Can you express yourself with a particular sexual behavior without having a particular sexual orientation? What is the difference between sexual orientation and sexual behavior? Tell us a bit more.
So who you're attracted to and what you happen to be doing at the time are two different things.
Two different things.
Right? So let me give an example from one of the orientations that I just mentioned. Let's say somebody's their identified sexual orientation is that they are bisexual.
Yes.
Right? And let's say this is a man who says he is bisexual. But at the current moment, he is in a relationship with another man, right? This does not, his sexual behavior at this moment, who he's engaging with, is he's in a same-sex, same-gender relationship. But that doesn't make him gay. He is still bisexual. If he says he's bisexual, he's still bisexual.
Yes.
Right? Similarly, we do see that there are occasions where people may engage, for example, in same-sex intimate contact or romantic contact, but then when you ask them, hey, you know, like, who are you attracted to? They may say, oh, I'm heterosexual, I'm straight.
Yes.
Right? I think the take-home message here is that it's one thing to have an internal sense of what you are attracted to, and it's another thing to act on it.
Yes.
Right? And sexuality and sexual orientation, it is a spectrum. Right?
Yes.
And people are complex.
Definitely. Okay, well, that is very insightful, enlightening. Thank you so much for clarifying that a bit for us surrounding the issue of sexual orientation and sexual behavior and what might be some similarities or differences.
Yes.
We appreciate that. Now, in our particular Vincentian society, when we talk about gays and lesbians, one of the first things that some people turn to is saying that there's something wrong with you, you have a mental illness.
Yes.
Dr. Lisa Alvis, you're a school and clinical psychologist. Can you enlighten us about this? Is this true? Is it a mental illness?
It is not. So I want to say this unequivocally so that people understand it isn't. There was a point in time in the medical community, particularly psychiatry, where being same-sex attracted was indicated as being some sort of a mental disorder. It has been removed from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Conditions. That is basically, so sometimes we'll call it like it's the psychiatric Bible.
Yes.
When we're looking to diagnose somebody with a mental health condition, that is the book that we consult for what are the criteria for that and do they meet it. It is not there. It was removed in 1973. It was removed when we were going, I think, from the DSM-3, the version 3 to version 4.
Okay.
So just to say, just across psychiatry, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the International Classification of Disorders and Diseases, it is not there. It's not a disease. But it is different, right? It is a variation, right, on what people can be attracted to, and it is a minority, right? So to be same-sex attracted is something that is, if you are somebody who, if that's how you identify, if that's your sexual orientation, it is a minority, right? But left-handedness is a minority as well, right? It's a variation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very enlightening. So for those persons who are wondering about the connection between same-sex attraction and mental illness, and if it is or is not, Dr. Alvis has clarified that for us here today. Wonderful. So, we're learning, we're having a conversation, we're dispelling myths and misconceptions today. Now, while it may not be a mental illness or mental disorder, at least based on current classifications, as you said in the past, maybe they would have classified it in various ways, but it's not a mental illness in our contemporary modern society. It's a crime. So in St. Vincent and Grenadines, unfortunately, same-sex conduct, private consensual same-sex conduct between adults is a crime. So under our criminal code, under the buggery provision, we criminalize anal sex. Buggery means anal sex. And basically that's an inheritance from our British colonial legacy, because in the 1500s, they created the Buggery Act in the UK, and after all those centuries, St. Vincent still, somehow was inspired or inherited those laws, and we still have them today in the 24th century. So 1500s to 24th century, you could imagine. And so it's a crime. And while the law criminalizes buggery or anal sex across the board, so whether you're man and man, man with a woman, man with an animal, for the most part, when we talk about anal sex and buggery, people usually refer to men, or it disproportionately has an impact on men who are same-sex attracted and have persons with another manner. So the law disproportionately, unfortunately, impacts homosexual persons, and it perpetuates prejudice and bias against men, especially who engage in that sort of activity, because there's many sex positions, there's many various sexual acts that you can engage in, and unfortunately that law criminalizes persons who choose to express their love, express their sexual behavior or intimacy, in that way. And also we have a provision dealing with gross indecency, which criminalizes across the board all other acts that are not anal sex within St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So if by chance you're a woman who's attracted to another woman and having sex with her, you don't even have to be having sex. You could be kissing, maybe holding hands, petting, touching the breast, etc. These can be considered criminal acts. Now, the good thing is, for the most part, these laws aren't enforced. Who's seeing all these people through people's bedrooms and locking up people out. But they're still there, and they still have an impact. And who knows if they are still on the books? Any government or police could enforce them if they choose to.
It drives fear, it drives stigma.
Exactly, it drives fear, it drives stigma, it drives prejudice, it drives bias within our society. And so, you know, we continue to call upon the government, you know, to repeal these laws, you know, so that persons who are queer, who are part of the LGBTQ+ community, do not have to live under the shadow of these discriminatory laws. So while Dr. Alves said it's not a mental illness, it's so unfortunately these sexual acts.
There's legal implications.
There's legal implications for them in the country.
Yes.
So they're not enforced, and the laws were challenged, but unfortunately they were unsuccessful. The case was unsuccessful in the High Court, and there's currently been appeal. Should we look forward to see what happens, if anything, regarding that appeal? That's a bit of an overview regarding the mental status and the legal status.
Yes.
When it comes to homosexuality here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. So, when we start talking about sex and sexual attraction and sexual orientation, this topic always comes up. Pedophilia.
Yes.
What is pedophilia, Dr. Alves? And are all homosexuals or gay people pedophiles?
I think it's really important that we talk about this. And I want to position this conversation maybe a little bit differently than I hear it positioned in some places.
Yes.
I think there are some important assertions to make.
Yes.
But it's happening against an important context, particularly here in the Caribbean.
Yes.
In the Caribbean, we do have a legacy of child sexual abuse.
Yes.
It is far too common. We have among the youngest ages of what we call sexual debut in the world, right? Meaning the first time a person engages in sexual activity.
Yes.
Right? I think at this point it's hovering at about age 9, which is categorically too young to give consent. And what it means is that people are engaging in sexual activity very young, and in most cases it is abusive. It's generally with someone who is older, generally an adult, right? So I don't want that to get lost, and I don't want anyone to think I'm dismissing that, because it's important that we think about that, because moving the conversation toward this being about people who are coming from the LGBTQAI community shifts our focus away from this very real problem, right? So to define, pedophilia has to do with somebody who experiences a pattern of sexual attraction to children, meaning people who are prepubescent. You have not begun to develop all of the characteristics that we associate with being an adult person, whether that's the growth of breasts, whether that is having pubic hair, what we call secondary sexual characteristics. These are people who are attracted to children, right? Now, the phenomenon of being attracted to a child and actually engaging a child sexually, right? Or, well, I shouldn't say engaging, assaulting a child, abusing a child, raping a child, right? That's a crime.
Yes.
Right? So the crime is child sexual abuse, right? Now, not all of the people who abuse children, I actually would hazard to say most of the people who abuse children sexually are not pedophiles. So this is why I think it's so important that we position this up against this conversation about child sexual abuse in the Caribbean more broadly.
Yes.
Childhood sexual abuse has to do with access, opportunity, and power.
Yes.
Right? So it has to do with somebody who thinks that they can exploit and are otherwise entitled to a young person's body, right? So they are not one and the same thing with somebody who says that they are lesbian or gay, bisexual, or any other sexual orientation that isn't heterosexual. The vast majority of people who commit these crimes of childhood sexual abuse are heterosexual. And most of them know the children that they abuse. So it tends to be somebody who's very close to them. So the lie and the misconception that there is some sort of an overlap between being attracted to prepubescent children and being homosexual, it's problematic on a number of fronts. It drives stigma and discrimination and harm, right? Physical danger for people who come from the LGBTQAI community, but it also reduces our ability to actually confront and address childhood sexual abuse when it occurs. So it does both groups of people a disservice.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Alvis, for that exposition. I think it's very important.
It is.
You know, that we talk about this particular issue of misconception and shed some light around it, because unfortunately a lot of people think this way.
Yes.
And feel that this is the case. When, as you said, it's much more complex than that.
But even,
and it's doing a disservice.
But even
to the
going
victim.
back, going back to our conversation,
Yes.
the way we began, and I think it was a good idea to position this from a place of like, well, what role does shame play? The same shame that informs people not being able to say, this is who I'm attracted to, this is who I love, as consenting adults, by the way.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to keep saying that.
Yes.
That same shame that informs that, or even the shame that informs not being able to talk about sex and sexuality, is the same shame that makes it difficult for people to report abuse, for us to actually hold people accountable for these crimes when they commit them. Those two things work together so that it's the same shame underpinning all of it. Yeah.
Okay. That's very interesting. And shame prevents people from seeking help.
Yes.
From getting help.
Prevents them from talking about what has happened to them.
And from us even properly addressing these issues.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's important that we make mention of that.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So, we've talked a little bit about sexual orientation, sexual behavior. You know, we've went to some examples, dispelled some myths and misconceptions. Now we're going to get into what some persons might say is an even more controversial topic, especially within our Vincentian context. The issue of gender and gender identity. So, Dr. Alvis, we often hear concepts and terms such as gender and gender roles. Just for the benefit of the audience who might not know what these things are, what exactly is gender? What exactly are gender roles? What is gender identity as well? Can you tell us the differences?
Definitely. So when we're having these conversations, so sometimes we'll hear people use the word gender and the word sex interchangeably. But tonight, the way we're using the word gender is to refer to it's a social construct. And what that means is we have ideas about gender that have to do with meanings around what it means to be male and what it means to be female. And when we say that something is socially constructed, we mean that there may be rules. I'm putting it in air quotes because those rules are flexible, because depending on what country you go to or what society you're in, you may find that there's shift.
Time period.
Exactly. Historically, there's differences, right? But they have to do with socially held ideas about what it means to be male or female, right? So gender is a social construct. Sex is, at least the way we have it positioned tonight and the way we would talk about it in in places where we're talking about sexual orientation, gender identity, we would distinguish those from each other. Sex
Yes.
is biological and has to do with the body,
Yes.
right? Gender has to do with society. So, as I said before, gender, if we as a society, we have ideas about, well, what does it mean to be a boy or a man? What does it mean to be a girl or a woman?
Yes.
And we have expectations associated with that. And we hear it in the things that we say to each other, for example. Even, I think one of the places that we hear gender expectations present themselves quite frequently is when people are raising children. The expectation, for example, that a boy shouldn't cry, right? That boys should be more stoic, or the expectation that a boy is going to be more boisterous, right? Or competitive. The expectation that a woman is going to be or compassionate. We have these ideas built into the concept of what it means to be boy, girl, man, woman, right? But these things they're social scripts, right? And what can happen is that people can feel quite limited by these scripts. If how they experience themselves or how they think of their own gender differs from the society's expectations of them, since we were just talking about the phenomenon of people who may have been abused or assaulted and then don't want to talk about it, I see the gender, so the expectations around the male gender and the gender roles that we have associated with it,
Yes.
preventing men from help seeking. Because
Definitely.
we have some expectations around a man, like I said, being stoic. And, you gotta man up and you should be strong.
Exactly.
Right? And in my clinical practice, I definitely see how that plays out and affects their lives because they are less willing to seek help. But that's it. So that's how gender plays out. That gender is socially constructed. It ends up dictating to us what people expect of us based on our perceived gender. Things that we can or can't do based on that, and our ideas about whether or not there's a mismatch between how we feel about ourselves and how society sees us.
Okay. Thank you so much for providing some clarification on that for us from gender and gender roles and so forth. Now, this is a touchy topic for many people.
Yes.
Because people feel that you're born a certain way and you can't change, or you shouldn't change, or identify as something different. What is gender identity?
Right.
What does that mean?
So in the same way, so we have gender and social expectations associated with gender that are external, right? That's what the world is saying to you. But inside of you, you have the way that you understand yourself, right? So your gender identity is your sense of who you are with respect to your own gender. Now, some people understand themselves as male. Some people understand themselves as female. Some people understand themselves as neither, right? Or some variation within that. So gender identity and sex have a relationship with each other, and we're going to talk more about that this evening. But for people for whom their gender identity, so how they understand themselves, do I understand myself to be a man or a woman? Does that align with the sex that I was assigned at birth? Meaning, what's written on my birth certificate? Is there an M or an F on my birth certificate? If I identify, if my gender identity is, I think of myself as a woman, and my birth certificate says F, meaning that when I was born, somebody looked at my body and said, oh, this looks like a little girl, then we would call that person cisgendered, meaning just cis means CIS just means same. There's a match between the two. But there are people for whom they feel a mismatch between those two things. But basically, everybody has a gender identity. Even if you've never really thought too much about your your gender identity, you have one.
Yeah.
Chances are you maybe didn't think about it too much because whatever your internal sense of who you are and people's expectations of you probably match. So you haven't had to think about it too much. When you think about how you want to dress or how you want to move through the world or how you want to behave or who you're attracted to, those things are happening in line with what people expect of you.
Yes.
But if they don't, then you've probably had to think about it more, and maybe you do feel a mismatch between your gender identity and people's expectations of you.
Okay. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And we jump straight into another term, which we often hear. So tell us a bit more about this concept or term called gender expression.
So gender expression, so we have this idea of who we are, right, internally. And then there's how we show that off to the world. So let's use today. So for example, I am wearing clothing that is typically associated with girls and women.
Yes.
I'm wearing a dress. I'm wearing heels.
Yes.
Right? Although there was a point in time, since you mentioned history, there's a point in time where men wore heels. But
and pink.
And pink. But currently in 2026, we tend to associate dresses and heels and makeup with girls and women. Right? So my gender expression is one that indicates that an alignment with being feminine. Right? However, and I do this as well, there are days that I might have presentation that looks more either androgynous, meaning looking like a little bit of both, a little bit male, a little bit female, or even masculine, right? So if you're wearing clothing or even your body language, the way you move through the world in a way that looks more like a man, right? So gender expression has to do with how so if your gender identity is something that's internal and it's something that you know about yourself, your gender expression is how you choose to show that to the world, right? And it does not necessarily follow that a person has to express their gender identity with their clothing. They can. With their clothing, the way that they speak, their mannerisms, their hair, but those are some of the ways that you can speak to the world and signal how you would like to be perceived. Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting. And I think what's coming out of this conversation are two important things. How people or the world perceives us.
Yes.
And how we perceive
ourselves.
Yes. And we're also learning about social constructs and how society creates things and
we make reality together.
Make reality for people and then tries to impose it on others. But not everybody may fit neatly into those boxes. Of course. You know? We are different beings, we have differences amongst ourselves, and that's the beauty of humanity. We are diverse. If everyone was the same, the world would be a very boring place.
Exactly. It would be very
boring. But we have some diversity within our human experience, including when it comes to our sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity and gender expression, as we are learning here on this program. Now, sometimes when we talk about gender identity and gender expression, various groups or concepts come up. And sometimes you might hear about somebody who's transsexual or non-binary and so forth. Tell us a bit more about what maybe these concepts or terms mean.
So I started touching a little bit on it a moment ago with the idea of how do you understand yourself and maybe what is on a birth certificate.
Exactly.
Right? So when we talk about people who are, so I mentioned that there might be a person for whom those two things feel aligned with each other. That, let's say, they understand themselves as a girl or woman, and their birth certificate says F for female. That what's on their birth certificate is their sex that they were assigned at birth by a medical professional.
Yes.
And we assign sex visually, primarily. It's really from looking at the infant and looking at their genitals, really. Right? Now, for some people, those two things don't match. Their gender identity and the sex that they were assigned at birth don't match.
Okay.
So how they understand themselves to be and their sex assigned at birth, they're like, no, I don't feel like. So using that same example, somebody who understands themselves as a girl or a woman, but that birth certificate says M. Male. Right? Now, so somebody who identifies as a woman, but sex assigned at birth is male, is a transgendered woman. Or sometimes we'll even say a trans woman, right? Somebody who identifies as a man, but sex assigned at birth was female, is a transgendered man, a trans man, right? Something that I think is really important to know, because I do get a lot of questions from people about this, if this has to do with dressing up or pretending. No, there are people who do for various reasons. There are people who do cross-dress, for example, and people who engage in drag.
Yes.
But when you ask those people, what is your gender identity? They will tell you either, so in terms of if you're somebody who is, if you engage in drag and you are male, they're like, no, I'm a man. I'm a drag queen, but I'm a man, right? And similarly, we have drag kings. It's like, I'm a woman, but I impersonate a man for entertainment purposes, right? That's very different than, no, my understanding of myself is that I am this. But my birth certificate says that.
Yes, it's different.
Right? So when we talk about somebody being transgendered, we are talking about somebody who is moving away from the sex that was assigned to them at birth to the gender that they understand themselves to be. And they feel a mismatch between those two things. Now, non-binary is interesting, right? Because so before I was talking about the idea of, well, what was the sex that you were assigned at birth, and what do you understand your gender identity to be? A non-binary person may say, well, I don't understand myself as male or female, man or woman.
Okay.
Right? I understand myself to be outside of that binary in some way. And there are other words apart from non-binary.
Yes.
And people understand themselves differently within that umbrella. You'll get people who identify themselves as non-binary who say, oh, I feel like I contain both masculine and feminine elements. There are communities in which we will talk about people who are two-spirited. Right, so indigenous populations. We may talk about two-spirited individuals who feel like they embody both male and female, but you may even find people who say, no, well, I don't think of myself as having a gender. I think of myself as a gender, right? So there are some places where if you read about being non-binary, they will say that being non-binary falls under the broader umbrella of transgender, that you're somehow outside of the cisgendered spectrum. But generally, as I said before, a person who is indicating I am transgendered, it generally has to do with their gender identity being misaligned with sex assigned at birth. Somebody who says I am non-binary means that their gender identity, they don't identify with being either male or female as one or the other. They identify themselves in some other way. They see themselves outside of that binary.
Okay, that's interesting. And I noticed you mentioned an important term, the binary.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And that person's can identify outside of, that binary. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's a gender identity can be a spectrum. It can be complicated.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Similar to sexual orientation.
Yes.
And it's complex.
Yes.
And human experience is diverse.
Right.
Included in the area of gender identity. And of course, there's a lot more identities that we could talk about.
Of course.
But we just want to, touch
We're
a bit on
covering
that.
some big ones.
Yes.
But I think it's important for people to recognize and sometimes what people have a tendency to do is assume one of these based on the other. But your gender identity is not the same as your gender expression, and that is not the same as your sexual orientation.
Exactly.
So we could have a woman who identifies as a woman, so her gender identity is as cisgendered female, right? Whose gender expression is maybe more androgynous. Maybe she never wears skirts. Maybe she's always in pants, and she buys male clothing, and that's how she prefers to dress. Maybe she cuts her hair short, right? And then in terms of her sexual orientation, maybe she's attracted to men, right? You can't presume somebody's sexual orientation based on their gender expression. Similarly, you can't presume their gender identity based on their gender expression either.
Okay, I understand.
So you may hear things like that where it's like, oh, she's trying to be a man, or he's like a girl.
They're different.
You haven't asked him.
They're
You don't. Until you ask someone, you would know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of times we assume things by looking at people and we're like, oh, you're this, you're that. But you never know. So it's always good to have a conversation or ask politely.
Of course.
To really get to know how people really feel about and identify themselves. Because you may perceive them a certain way, the world may perceive them or think that they should be or are something or someone. But they may feel differently.
Yes.
Or maybe they may confirm what you think. But it's important that we ask and have those conversations. And respectfully, please.
Yes, of
That's
course.
important.
Not what are you?
Exactly.
But there is something that I realized that we didn't touch on. And similarly, in line with your question about whether or not a particular sexual orientation is indicative of a mental health disorder, or whether it's classified as a disorder. People often ask that about being transgendered as well. And at one point, there was a term called gender identity disorder that was identified. It has since been removed from the DSM. And as of 2019, we don't talk about gender identity disorder. We do talk about people experiencing what we call gender incongruence. So incongruence just means mismatch. So that same mismatch that I was talking about, and people may experience distress because of the mismatch between how they understand themselves to be and the sex that they were assigned at birth. But that distress has to do with how they're treated and how their internal reality, when they say, for example, I identify as this, and therefore I would like to maybe dress a certain way or act a certain way. The distress is amplified by how they're treated, not because of who they are, which is one of the reasons why it has been removed as a disorder. But we do talk about people who do experience some degree of gender dysphoria.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think that's important to note.
Yes, it is.
Considering our society and
People
what people
do
may think.
ask, is it an illness?
Yes.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. But there you have your answer, folks, in case you were wondering if it is or is not a mental illness. Thank you so much, Dr. Alvis. So I know we've already touched on this a bit. In society, we talk about the binary, we talk about male and female, but sometimes not everyone neatly fixed into these categories.
Yeah.
And we have people, with different variations. But before we get into the whole issue of intersex rights, and you've already touched on it a bit, but sometimes we talk about sex and sex assigned at birth.
Yes.
What may be the difference between those two concepts or terms?
Well, so the two of them, so when we talk about sex or sex assigned at birth, we're talking about biological sex. And even biological sex is more complicated than some people realize it is.
Yes.
So when an infant is born and we're looking to put something on that birth certificate, we do it by visual examination.
Yes.
Does that look like a vulva? Does it look like female genitalia, or does that look like a penis and a scrotum, and we assign male, right? But the reality of biological sex has to do with not just anatomy, which is what we're talking about there, like what are the actual physical structures.
Yes.
But there's external genitalia, but there's also your internal organs, because of course there's the question of ovaries, a uterus versus testes.
Yes.
Right? And then there's the question of your chromosomes. So what's happening at the level of your DNA, and then your hormones.
Yes.
So where we are familiar with the fact that there are hormones that human beings have that influence how our bodies develop, what we look like, how we go through puberty. So estrogen and testosterone are probably the chief ones that we would talk about.
Okay.
Right? So a person's biological sex has to do with a combination of what's happening at the chromosomal level. Some people think that there's only XX, which would be female, and XY, which is male. That's not the case. There are instances of other chromosomal variations. Hormonally, what's happening? What are your levels of estrogen and testosterone? But also, can your body respond to those hormones?
Okay.
And then the anatomy of both your internal organs and your external genitalia.
Okay.
All of those things combine to give us biological sex. So it's a lot more complicated than people may think.
That's very interesting.
However, for the vast majority of people, these things line up with each other. That generally, if an infant is born with what appears to be a penis and a scrotum, then inside, generally, there are testes, which then descend as a young person gets older. Generally, a little boy's testes descend before the age of 5. And then if we were to do chromosomal testing, we may see that his chromosomes are XY. And then when he goes through puberty, he will begin to secrete more testosterone, and his body's going to respond to that. For most people, those things all line up, and they may say, and I think of myself as a man, right? But that's not the case for everybody.
Those who don't, they're just intersex person.
Right. So for people for whom those things, there's variation. And again, I want to note, these are naturally occurring variations, right? They're not diseases. They're not disorders. They're variations. The estimate is that about 1.7% of people are born with some degree of intersex variation, which means some variation in those three things: chromosomes, hormones, or anatomical features, organs, and external genitalia. So to translate that to St. Vincent, we have roughly 100,000 people in St. Vincent. 1.7% is 1,700 people.
Okay.
And that may mean that maybe you respond to sex hormones differently, right? Maybe you didn't go through puberty in the way that we expected you to, right? Because your body cannot respond to testosterone or estrogen in the way we expect. That happens with some people. There may be instances, so these are things that are documented medically. A young person, a young woman who develops other secondary sexual characteristics, maybe she grows breasts and she seems to be coming into womanhood, but then doesn't have a menstrual cycle, doesn't have a period. And then when we investigate, find that she doesn't have a uterus, or that the vagina ends and it's blind. And we say blind at the end, there's nothing, it doesn't lead to anything, right? Or persons who have what may seem, I'm going to use the word conflicting, but I can't think of a better word to use right now, that a person who had one set of external genitalia, and you make an assumption about them based on that, but then maybe they had some sort of physical ailment, maybe they needed a surgery, and then we do an ultrasound and we find out, oh, well, there's a vulva on the outside, but then we're like, oh, but those are undescended testicles. Those are testicles. Right. So it is possible to have variation across, like I said, those three areas: chromosomes, hormones, and anatomy, that may make a person fall into the category of what we call intersexed.
Okay. That's very interesting. And we see how, these things can challenge a lot of people's traditional understanding.
Absolutely, because we
of
hear people
biological
saying,
sex.
"Oh, there's only two sexes. There's only male and female." Well, no. It's the reality is a bit more complex, and I just want to reiterate again, these are natural variations. So when we do see people who may be intersex and then they are also expressing what their gender identity is, for example, right? And maybe they're expressing a gender identity that appears at odds with their sex assigned at birth. There might be a biological reason for that too.
Okay. Okay, that's very interesting to learn about. You know, life is oftentimes more diverse and complex than we were taught. And it's good that we could delve into it and learn a bit more about those complexities, those nuances, you know, because that's why we're here to learn, you know, as a society. Now we're going to delve into what can sometimes be a very traumatic topic for some people, but it's surrounding the issue of conversion therapy.
Right.
You know, people think that, oh, maybe you could pray to get away, maybe you could go to a psychiatrist or psychologist.
Yes.
And maybe they could help cure you from how you feel.
Yes.
Who you're attracted to, what you identify as. Does it work? Does it cure people? What exactly is conversion therapy, Dr. Avis?
So let's start by just this idea of there being a therapy to address the question of one's sexual orientation, because that in and of itself would assume that sexual orientation is a mental disorder or disease of some kind that requires a therapy or a cure. And we covered before that it isn't. So in reputable medical circles, among medical and psychological organizations, including World Health and Pan American Health organizations, there's no such thing as either conversion or reparative therapy. We condemn it as traumatic. We condemn it as not being medical, right? So this refers to practices that attempt to change someone's either sexual orientation or their gender identity, right? And the practices that are used as part of things called conversion therapy can range from things that are psychological to religious interventions, but even harmful physical practices. And it generally has to do with trauma. You're trying to get that person to associate either their sexual orientation or their gender identity with something painful or shameful in order to attempt to turn them away from it. And what we find is that it results in harm. It results in lasting psychological and, depending on what types of interventions, physical scars, right? So no, there's no such thing as conversion therapy. Not that any reputable medical or psychological practice would engage in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people even kill themselves and over this.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
So the harm, you know, that can be caused.
The idea that a person who's if they're same-sex attracted, or that they have a gender identity that runs counter to what the societal expectations are of them, like, people feel such deep distress over that and the way that they're treated. So that's where the issue lies. The issue lies not in who these people are, it's in how they are treated, the amount of shame that they absorb, and in some cases to the place of thinking, well, there's no place in this world for me. So my best option is to die by my own hand. That does indeed happen. Yeah. Or in some cases to be, I mean, of course, suicide is the unfortunate end in some of these cases, but there's a lot of other tragic outcomes as well. Just the idea, the amount of anxiety and depression that people experience, even if they continue to live, the isolation, just the phenomenon of not being able to live as yourself. There's stress.
Yes.
That's associated with it. There's pain, there's loneliness, right? So I can't overstate how harmful anything that is billing itself as conversion therapy is.
Okay. Thank you so much for, elaborating on that, because I think as a lot of queer people, because I'm a queer person myself, we struggle. We struggle with, being who we are and also trying to fit into society. And oftentimes people say, oh, we can change you, or we can pray it away, or maybe you need to get some sort of therapy. And oftentimes, if not all the time, it doesn't work.
I mean, interestingly enough, like you will hear testimonials from people who struggled with their identity because of what they've realized from the world around them. They realized, oh, this isn't accepted, or they've realized that maybe the people that they want, that they most need love and acceptance from their own families don't accept them. You'll hear people say, like, I prayed for this to be taken away from me. I prayed to be different. It doesn't go away. It doesn't work. Because it is not something that you choose.
Exactly, because if you could choose, you could go back and forth.
There are people who would say, if I could have chosen to be something that would allow my family, that would allow people around me to accept me. You
and not have
hear,
such a hard life.
Yeah, you hear that from queer people where they say,
why would I choose?
There was a point in time in my life where this was so painful that I used to wish that I could be something else, or that I even tried to be something else.
Exactly.
And it didn't work, that it was more painful trying to be something that they were not.
Exactly. Yeah. And many of us, including myself, we've tried to be something else different, but this is who we are, and we didn't choose to be this way. This is just who we are as human beings. So, conversion therapy and, the impact of it it's a mouthful, But let's delve a bit more into some impact.
Yeah.
So, which you've already started to touch on them, but what are some negative impacts, of discrimination when we don't accept people for who they are? Because as we've been learning today on this program, human experience is complex. It's diverse. We're not all the same.
Right.
People have different experiences in how they who they are attracted to, whether it's sexually, romantically, emotionally, who they identify or what they identify as in terms of their gender identity, how they, so that's who they see themselves internally, and also how they express their gender, or show the world their gender roles or even their gender identity. And also we learned about, the whole issue of sex and intersex rights, and it's a bit more complex than simply just saying, male and female, and science and research has, knowledge has increased, and we've been able to learn a bit more about the human experience. So whether or not you want to say, oh, it's because of religion or some sort of cultural belief that, okay, there's only two.
Yes.
Or you should only be this way or act this way. The fact of the matter is, human experience is much more complex and diverse than that. But unfortunately, because of society and how the world perceives people, we don't always accept or tolerate, and many times people discriminate and are violent or kill, murder others because they're different. But difference isn't evil. It isn't something, to always be ashamed of.
There's variation.
There's variation in our experiences, but that difference can be detrimental to the person who's experiencing, and even those around them. So tell us a bit more about what some of those negative impacts might be, Dr. Alvis.
So the impact of both. So there's a lot of stigma attached to being part of the LGBTQAI plus community, particularly for people whose gender expression is different than what's expected on top of that. And so and as you covered before, there is the social context of criminalization. There are misconceptions about the connection between persons who espouse these identities and being aligned with things like abuse, pedophilia, myths that abound. And all of these things serve to drive stigma.
Yes.
And then that stigma is what fuels discrimination. And the impact of that discrimination is well documented, both here in St. Vincent, in the wider Caribbean region, and worldwide, right? So people who are from the LGBTQAI population or community experience higher levels of anxiety, depression, and suicidality, as we've indicated before. But apart from them experiencing higher levels of all of these mental health concerns and issues, there's also the impact of just moving through a world that may be hostile toward you. And I had mentioned before the concept of like people's very families, the idea of your home and your parents, your siblings, the people, your church congregation, your community, people who are close to you and know you, who you expect to experience love and safety from, and what you're instead getting from them is rejection and hostility. It's hard to overstate how negative the impact on somebody is of going through that, from family, from friends, from peers, from classmates. So this takes a genuine toll on every dimension of a queer person's life, right? And I mean, it can impact their access to things. So when we talk about people who come from minority populations, they experience stress as associated with being minoritized, right? And that stress is not a one-time thing. It's not that, oh, I encountered this person who maybe called me a slur, or who maybe, who maybe denied me an opportunity for something. It's cumulative. It's chronic. It builds over time. And, and it's something that wears on you, right? So it has impacts on people's access to employment, how they are perceived, how they move through the world might impact things like that. Their access to health care. I think this is a huge one, and we kind of touched on it a bit before, right? Whether or not you feel that you're going to be understood by your healthcare provider, whether you're going to be stigmatized there as well or discriminated against, whether you'll be able to get care that is gender affirming, whether people are going to call you by your chosen pronouns, for example. Things like that are all things that keep people from seeking healthcare and medical attention when they need it. So when they finally do seek care, they may be sicker than they would have been, right? Or maybe they will have developed a disease when there was no need, right? Housing. So if you are experiencing this hostility from your own family, there's a greater likelihood that you will leave your home, and then you're at risk because maybe you are housing insecure or even homeless. So you're at greater risk of being assaulted, exploited, because you're just generally living in a state of precarity. I think the other thing that that we have to realize is that, and this has been documented by, I think it was Human Rights Watch, when they documented that when people experience these things, those persons who do have the opportunity to leave do.
Yes.
So there's not only the impact of stigma and discrimination on the individual in terms of their mental health, their housing, their work, their health care, but also what it does to us as a society and does to us as a nation, because we lose those people, the ones who do have sufficient resources and privilege to maybe go elsewhere. We lose their talent, we lose their minds, we lose their contribution, you know? So it's damaging to everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, we've learned a lot today. You know, and we understand that some of these topics are sensitive. People might not understand them, but we hope that this program has been able to give you a bit more knowledge surrounding that. And we've seen how, you know, when we exclude people and we discriminate and are violent, what are some of the negative, you know, impacts, you know, that can happen to them, and it impacts the whole of society. It's like a domino.
Yes.
You know, everything goes down.
Yeah.
But on a positive, more hopeful note, what are some benefits that we can gain as a people, as a society, when we are more accepting, more tolerant, more inclusive of LGBTQI plus persons, of intentions within our society?
I always love when we can close out on this kind of a question, because very often when we start talking to people about anything that has to do with diversity and being more tolerant and what it would mean to have a society that's more inclusive, you may have people saying, well, why should I bother? Is this just about being politically correct? Is this just about, you know, making people who are different from me feel better? No, it's about a better and more inclusive world for everyone.
Everyone.
So when we protect the rights of people, the people who are most vulnerable in our society, and ERO, SVG Inc. accounts for those persons. So we think of women, children, people from the LGBTQAI population, and people who are disabled.
Yes.
When we create a world that allows for their full participation, we actually make a better world for everybody.
Definitely.
Right? I had mentioned before that the same shame that underpins talking about the lives, identities, and behaviors of people who come from the LGBTQAI community, that same shame is what prevents people who are being harmed in other ways, whether it's children or adults who are being sexually abused, other people who are being discriminated against. It's that same thing that keeps us from being able to actually attend to those people's needs, right? So in knocking down these barriers for people who come from the LGBTQAI population, we support everybody. Now, one of the things, so when we talk about being queer, a lot of the time we talk about what it means to be a minority and the many painful experiences that people have.
Yes.
And that is a true thing, it's a real thing. But there's also a lot of joy and a lot of community that you can experience when you accept yourself and when people are accepting of you. And amid all of the other negative life outcomes and mental health outcomes that I talked about, when people are accepted, when they are supported, even if it's by one person in their life, we see positive impact from that. Right? So if you are somebody who's listening to this program and you are somebody who has been wrestling with your own identity and feeling isolated, feeling alone, know that there are other people who are similarly identified, and we are in the process of creating a St. Vincent that is more broadly tolerant and safer for everybody concerned.
Yes.
Right? And in general, like just even in sitting here and doing a program like this, or events like being able to have Pride SVG, and having forums for us to talk about things, educate the public, add to people's vocabulary, address misconceptions that they might have. These things are amazing steps forward. I think these are things that we did not have 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So it says that we are going in the right direction, and as much as this work can be really challenging.
Yes.
I do feel generally optimistic that this is something that we can do together.
Yes. Yes, we're optimistic and we have hope.
Yes.
You know, and we press forward in whatever ways we can.
Yeah.
You know, to continue to make our society better, not just for some.
Yeah.
Not just for a few, not just for the rich, or not just only for straight.
It's for everybody.
But for everybody. All of
For
us as Vincentians. And that's why USVG is here. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this work.
Yeah.
And putting ourselves out there as Vincentians. Because we want to see change.
Yeah.
We love our country. We want to see it develop and grow.
And into a place where there's human rights and dignity for everybody.
For everyone. So thank you so much, Dr. Alvis, for sharing all of that wonderful information with us. I'm sure many of our viewers might have been hearing these things for the first time.
Maybe.
You know, we usually have workshops in person, but we decided today to come on the TV. And, you know, for those of you who maybe can't make it out for whatever reason, because, you know, we have various persons who are at different stages of their life and who have certain privileges or not. And so we want to use a different format to reach people within this country. So just want to let you all know that this month is Pride Month, you know, and in SVG, you know, we are celebrating with a couple activities, you know, just to, you know, bring people together in solidarity, both LGBT persons and allies, and also, you know, stand together, whether it's against violence and discrimination, and, you know, kind of spread a message of love and acceptance, you know, for everyone, because as queer Vincentians, you know, we and they exist, and we're here, and we belong.
Yes.
We belong
Very
here.
much so.
Okay? So thank you everybody for joining us today, and I'll probably leave the last few words with Dr. Alvis. So Dr. Alvis, any parting words you'd like to leave with our viewers before we end today's program?
Yes. So I think the parting idea here is that kindness costs nothing. I often tell my clients, because people frequently come in asking about things that have to do with their relationships with other people. And ultimately, what we're talking about here is relationships within society.
Yes.
You know, how we treat each other. And I tell clients that the best tool that they have in their toolkit, and the best weapon that they have in their arsenal in terms of navigating their relationships with other people is curiosity. I think that when we can adopt that stance of being deeply curious about other people, it's like, I want to understand you better, not to agree or to disagree, just to understand you. I think that's the necessary first step, that we're not looking to categorize people or make a decision about somebody based on what they look like, what they sound like, or who they say that they love, but that we want to move into a space of better understanding.
Yes.
Right? And I would encourage you to do that broadly. This doesn't just have to do with people from the queer community. This has to do with your fellow man,
Yes.
your neighbor, because this really has to do with good citizenship. Yeah.
All of us.
And building a better nation.
Definitely. So thank you so much again, Dr. Alvis. Thank you so much to SVG-TV. Thank you to our viewers for joining us. And happy Pride, SVG, and all the best. Thank you.